I'm growing my hair out for the first time in like 30 years, alright? So don't judge. So I want to talk about a very important thing that the carnivore diet has kind of made me realize over the years. And it's kind of changed my mindset on in a very large way, actually. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is who was ultimately responsible for me getting extremely sick and me being on the brink of death and contracting all these crazy illnesses that I contracted, 5 years ago before I started the carnivore diet. And if you haven't seen that video where I kind of tell my story about how I landed on carnivore and all the crazy stuff I went through with my health, I'll put a link down below where you can watch that video. But long story short, I was generally a pretty healthy person. I worked out all the time. I exercised pretty much every day. I ate very healthy. I ate a clean bodybuilding style diet, all the healthy foods they promote. I was tracking my food. I tracked everything down to the microgram. I was taking vitamins and supplements and doing all this stuff that's promoted as healthy. Yet after about 12 years or so of doing that, I basically had the rug pulled out from under me, and my health was completely destroyed within 6 months' time. I had gained a significant amount of muscle. I started out about 145 pounds when I started weightlifting, and by the end of those 12 years, I was up to 230. I was big, I was healthy, I was lifting heavy weight, and I felt really good. But, looking back on that, there was definitely a lot of indicators that my body was giving me that was kind of telling me something was off. I think back then I was just a little too out of touch with my intuition and not in tune with my body, and I couldn't really understand what my body was trying to tell me. But ultimately what happened. And after 12 years of doing what I thought was the right thing, I had my health completely destroyed, and I lost all the muscle and all the hard work I gained over 12 years. I lost it in 6 months' time. And it was a really difficult experience. It really was. And throughout the period I was sick for over a year, like really sick, basically on the brink of death for over a year. And looking back on that, I found myself at times trying to pin the blame on something or someone. It's really easy to not really take responsibility for your actions and want to just pin the blame on something. And I think it's in human nature to just take the path of least resistance. We want to seek out comfort. We're always striving towards comfort. We never want to be uncomfortable. And I feel like taking responsibility for that and holding yourself accountable for that is really hard. And it makes you extremely uncomfortable. I know it did for me. And, I always wanted to blame like food, and I wanted to blame like me getting sick. It was just a bad hand I was dealt. And by all means, food definitely played a major role in why I was sick. And it is pretty much the sole reason why I got sick. It was the food I was eating. It was how much of that food I was eating, how often I was eating it, and just all the stuff I was exposed to through eating that food. It was definitely a major factor. And had I not have been eating that food, I wouldn't have got sick. I know that now, 100% I wouldn't have got sick, because I was sick when I was eating that food, and the moment I stopped eating that food and started eating nutrient-dense whole foods, when I started eating meat, I started to heal. And I think that's very telling in that, it kind of opened my eyes up to the fact that yes, it was the food that was causing the problem, but that's not the reason I got sick. The reason I got sick is 100%, hands down, my fault. It is my fault. It is because I chose to eat those foods. It was because I didn't question the narrative, and I believed everything I was told, and I believed you had to eat fruits and vegetables, and you had to eat whole grains, and you had to take vitamins, and all this stuff we're taught. I believed every single bit of it. And, there is some truth to some of that, but I continued to live that life and eat all these foods that were quote unquote healthy. All this stuff we're told is very healthy, and my health was destroyed. And again, when I stopped eating those foods and I started focusing on nutrient-dense whole foods, meat, all meat, I healed. So yes, the food caused my problem, and yes, I likely would not have gotten sick if it weren't for the food I was eating. It was my actions that led me there. It was because I was eating that food that led me to that point. And I think this is really important because, in today's society, just look around. Look around and block out all the noise, all the stuff you've been told, and just look around and see how many people that that's in your family, that you see on a day-to-day basis, that you see when you go out, when you go shopping, that are overweight, that are obese, that are sick. How many people do you know that's on pharmaceuticals? How many people do you know that are on something? And then look at all the stats. Look at the raw data. How many people get cancer every year? How many people now have diabetes? How many people are overweight or obese? Just do some research and look that stuff up and really stand back and think about it. You know, in 1970, we did not have this problem. This was not as prevalent as it is today. The rates of disease and obesity just weren't what they are today. And it's really easy to say, oh, well, you know, it's just our sedentary lifestyle, or maybe all the toxic stuff we're exposed to in our day-to-day lives. I'm sorry, but sedentary lifestyle does not account for 70% of the population being overweight or obese. It does not account for the rates of cancer and diabetes skyrocketing, or all these autoimmune conditions that have cropped up in the last 50 years. It doesn't account for all that. And not everybody's exposed to the same environmental toxins. So no matter how you look at it, no matter what way you spin the data and you manipulate the data, it's going to come down to food. And that's one thing I always talk about in this channel, is that you can not only look at us, but look at our dogs, because they're eating the same exact stuff. And they're not faring any better than us. And to me, that is extremely telling, because the stuff that's in our food is the same stuff that's in dog food, and it comes from the same corporations. It's all the same stuff. So you got 2 for 2 going there. And it is extremely easy to lay the blame on the food, to lay the blame on these big corporations that are feeding us this crap, and to lay the blame on the FDA for letting all this stuff pass in our food. But while they are a contributing factor, and they are a reason why we're sick, it is our fault. It is 100% our fault, because we have chosen to eat this food. If we had not chosen to eat this food, we would not be in the state we're in. Our health would not be in the worst shape that it's been throughout recorded history. We wouldn't have the rates of chronic disease and obesity that we have today had we not chosen to eat this hyper-processed food. And our choice in eating this hyper-processed toxic food is 100% the reason that it has gotten to the point that it is today. Because had we not have chosen to eat this food, and had we have chosen to get our food from our local farmers, or grow our own food, or source food from our communities like we used to do in the 70s, had we chosen to do that, that is the industry that would have proliferated and taken off. This hyper-processed garbage that we have today would not have existed. So I think, you know, again, it's really easy to lay the blame on these corporations and on FDA and the government entities and all these people and say it's their fault. But it is our fault. I'm sorry, but it's our fault. We've chosen to eat this food. Now, granted, it is engineered to be as addictive and as hyper-palatable as possible. It's literally made to draw you in, hook, line, and sinker, and keep you there. I won't argue that fact. That is true. But I think it's past time that we take accountability for our actions and realize that we're the reason why we got to this point. And until we change our habits, until we change the way that we buy food, and until we change our consumer habits, it's never going to change. It's never going to change. We have to start a movement where we focus on these nutrient-dense whole foods. And you don't have to eat meat. That's not what I'm saying. You don't have to eat meat. Not everybody has to be carnivore. Matter of fact, I don't believe everybody should be carnivore, because everybody's different, and different people are going to thrive on different things. But I think we can all agree that modern food, the food that they have promoted to us as healthy, and the food that they have told us that is good for us, and that is part of the food pyramid and all these dietary guidelines, all those foods, I think it's time we realize that that stuff is not doing us any favors. And, you know, it is the food that's causing these problems, but it's because we're consuming the foods. That's the point I'm trying to make here. And again, looking back when I was sick, like, there wasn't really a time where I was like, the reason I'm sick is somebody else's fault. Like, I knew it was something that I was doing, but it wasn't until I was carnivore and my mind was really cleared and I was able to really focus. And I was able to really kind of see the lies that we had been told. Because going carnivore, it opened my mind up to so many things. I mean, it literally lifted the veil. It seems like it opened a whole new world. It's almost hard to explain. But it allowed me to see things more clearly than I ever had in my entire life. And through that experience, I've come to realize so many things about diet and nutrition and the way the world works, and a lot of the lies that we've been told that we believe are true. And again, we kind of want to believe this stuff because it's comfortable. Like, it kind of puts us at ease, which we are biologically engineered to want to be comfortable. I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, from a survival standpoint, it just makes sense that we would want to be as comfortable as possible. And I think that's another really good point, is that, you know, a lot of these pharmaceutical industries, a lot of these drug manufacturers have really capitalized on the fact that we want to remain comfortable and we do want to take the path of least resistance. And that's the reason why these drugs like Ozempic are out there. That's the reason why people are buying them, because they would rather take a drug, a potentially harmful drug, they'd rather do that than take accountability for their actions, change their lifestyle, and accept the fact that the food they're consuming got them to that point. They would rather take these harmful drugs than change the way they look at food and entertain the idea about eating a carnivore diet or a low-carb diet or completely revamping their nutrition. And that's kind of a sad state of affairs, but again, the reason these drug manufacturers exist is because they're exploiting that biological trait of us wanting to be comfortable. So that's kind of ingrained in us, but I think sometimes it takes being a little uncomfortable temporarily to avoid a lifetime of discomfort later. And I think about this a lot because even after I started carnivore and I started eating meat, you know, for the first 3 or 4 weeks, first month, couple months, I really questioned what I was doing because it went against everything I'd been told. And every part of me just wanted to believe that if I continue this way of eating, eventually it's going to have a negative impact on my health. It's going to really hurt my health. But the longer I did this, and the longer I continued with this lifestyle, the healthier I got, which went against everything I'd been told. It went against everything I believed. It really challenged my beliefs, and it really made me uncomfortable. But through that discomfort, it really changed my life. It changed the way I view almost everything in life. It gave me a whole new perspective on the way I live my life, on diet and nutrition, and it just gave me a whole new perspective on life in general. And it's really amazing to think that something as simple as diet and the things that you put in your body could have that much of a profound impact on your life. But it really did. And it's a bunch of stuff that once you see, you just simply cannot unsee it. But through that, I know now that if I get sick again and the carnivore diet ends up doing all the stuff that mainstream media says it's going to do, and it ends up giving me cancer and gives me heart disease and clogs my arteries, I know now that that's my fault because I've chosen to adopt this lifestyle. And I've chosen to do it pretty much indefinitely because of the profound impacts it's had on my health. And that's on me. It's always going to be on me. Nobody is holding a to my head and making me do this. I'm doing this because it's the best I've ever felt in my entire life. I'll be 40 years old this year, and I feel the best I've ever felt, and I'm in the best health of my life. I'm in the best shape of my life. All right, now once you look at this, it's a very candid moment right here. See this? My camera's not really focusing, but this is a Lone Star tick. All right, I'm sitting out here next to my pasture. I'm trying out some of these natural bug repellents that, you know, I was kind of talking about in one of my videos. I'll put a link in the description below to that one too, but I'm trying out some of those natural bug repellents. Apparently this one's not working too well. Right now I've got the cedar one on. And this Lone Star tick is just crawling up my arm, all right? So I'm going to have to do a tick check after I get back in the house. But anyway, back to what I was saying. I'm in the best health of my life. And it is 100% because I've chosen this lifestyle. I've chosen to do this diet for so long. And I mean, if it continues this way, I'll never go back. But I'll always hold myself accountable for my actions. And if I start to feel like crap, and if this diet ends up not working out for me extremely long term, because I'm already 5 years in, so if, you know, next 5 years, if something doesn't work out, I'm not afraid to pivot. I'm not afraid to change my diet and change my lifestyle. Like, I'm not tied to this identity. Just because I eat this way, and I promote this because it's had these profound impacts on my health, doesn't mean that I'm dead set in my ways and like this is an ideology for me. I only talk about it because it has had these profound impacts on my health. And it's had just as profound impacts on the health of my dog since I switched her to carnivore. But again, I'll always hold myself accountable. And if things aren't working out, I'm not afraid to take blame and say, you know what, this isn't for me. Let me pivot and let me find something else that works. And that's what it's all about. It's about being healthy. You know, we're only here for a very finite amount of time. Our dogs are only here for a very finite amount of time, even less time than us. So it only makes sense to optimize that. And if that means me eating meat for the rest of my life, I'm totally fine with that. And the way I feel about it right now, nothing would make me happier than to do that. So if you take anything away from this video, I hope it's just that, you know, while it's really easy to blame big food, and it's really easy to blame the food that we consume and all the harmful stuff that goes in the food, and it's easy to blame our government and all these different people, I think it's time we hold ourselves responsible and understand and realize that the health of our nation is in this dire state because of the way we choose to live our lives, and because of the things that we choose to believe, and because of the places we spend our money. So I'm going to wrap it up before I get completely overwhelmed with ticks out here. My dog's laying right here behind me. She's kind of soaking it in too. I don't know how many ticks she has on her, but she's got the same bug spray on her, so hopefully this stuff isn't a dud. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, and I hope you got some value out of this video. I hope this resonated with you. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, join the Apex tribe. I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.